Giving birth is undoubtedly an experience of a lifetime. Whether it's a good or bad experience depends on the woman. While it seems unimaginable to give birth to anything other than a human, Mary Toft seemed to challenge that. In this video, we are going to cover the curious story of Mary Toft, the woman who gave birth to rabbits. So, we travel back in time to 1729 in Surrey, England. For those that don't know, Surrey, England hangs around the outskirts of London. It's very much a country-esque town, so you can expect it to be full of poverty and low-class people in the 1700s. In this little village, we are introduced to a woman named Mary Toft. Just like most other people living in the country at this time, she was an illiterate servant. She was 25 years old and married to a journeyman clothier named Joshua Toft. Unfortunately, it's said that she suffered from a miscarriage during this time, but much bigger and flashier news popped up. News reached King George I of Mary Toft still being pregnant after her miscarriage. While this is already extremely weird, there was much more odd news following. Apparently, she went into labor and with the help of her neighbor, Mary Gill, and mother-in-law, Anne Toft, she gave birth to what resembled a lifeless cat. Of course, this miraculous event spread quickly throughout England, so shortly after the birth of the lifeless cat, an obstetrician was called. Just to clarify, an obstetrician is a doctor who specializes in pregnancy, birth, and a woman's reproductive system. It seems like they called the right guy. John Howard, the obstetrician, was shown the animal parts that allegedly came out of Mary Toft, which followed with even more animal parts that were delivered by Howard. Over the course of the next month, and several animal parts later, Toft gave birth to 9 dead rabbits. Not only that, but this alleged birth of 9 rabbits was done in one day. Obviously, Howard had no idea what to do with this new information presented to him. So, he did a noble thing and contacted the most well-esteemed doctors in the country. With the news spread throughout England, a series of studies began on Toft and the baby rabbits she gave birth to. To begin, the king, who was obviously extremely curious about this case, sent 2 men to try and figure out what's going on. The first man, Nathaniel St. Andre, a Swiss surgeon and anatomist, and the second man, Samuel Molyneux, who was a secretary to the Prince of Wales. By the time these 2 men on a mission got to Guildford, Surrey, Mary had already given birth to her 15th rabbit. She was already regarded as a local celebrity. Obviously, anyone would be regarded as such if they were claiming such a miracle. These men were fortunate, more unfortunate, enough to witness Toft giving birth to more rabbits. This allowed them to make the conclusions they had to make regarding these odd births. Most doctors believed the best place to start to check if these births were in fact legitimate was to conduct a post-mortem on the rabbits. When they inspected them, they realized that these were unlikely formed within Mary's womb. The only person who seemingly disagreed with the blatantly obvious evidence was the very surgeon and anatomist that the king himself sent. St. Andre had extremely strong conviction that this was real and even brought specimens to the king. However, the king, being intelligent and realizing that this case was still unresolved, decided to send more well-established doctors to the scene. Before we continue, do you think this is a hoax or a miracle? Keep watching the video to find out the crazy realization the world had when they spoke to Mary Toft. We are sure you're going to be shocked. This time, the king sent a German surgeon named Cyriacus Ahlers and his friend Mr. Brand, of course. These 2 men were blessed with seeing Toft giving birth to dead rabbits. Sarcasm. All we can say is the king was wise to send Cyriacus to witness this because he displayed great cunning. After Cyriacus witnessed the births, he was not convinced of its reality at all. He decided to test the rabbits himself to see what he could find. Upon his examination, he found dung pellets. Yes, their poop. And guess what it contained? Corn, hay, and straw. What does this mean? Well, do you think that an unborn rabbit inside a human could eat corn, hay, or straw? We don't think so either. At this point in time, more and more doctors began observing the weird case of Mary Toft, and they were all saying that this was impossible and it was a fraud. However, both St. Andre and Howard still believed in the validity of these births. Both of these doctors became more and more concerned that they were the minority. Why? Because their reputation as doctors was slowly going down the drain. Finally, people decided to ask Mary Toft herself as to what's happening. Her answers make these matters much more clear as to whether this is a miracle or a hoax. Mary Toft tells the story that she and a friend were looking in a field and saw two rabbits. They tried to catch both of them, but couldn't do it because of the speed and agility they have. The same night, she dreamt of being in the same field, but the two rabbits were in her lap. She woke up in a sick fit and then claimed that she strongly desired to eat rabbits for the next 3 months, but she was too poor to afford rabbits to eat. Does this make any sense as to why she gave birth to rabbits? It doesn't to us either. But it did make sense to doctors in the 1700s. The theory of maternal impression was widely regarded and accepted during this time. Essentially, it's a theory that a woman can impress a defect in their child by simply exhibiting strong symptoms of something. A notable example is the case of the Elephant Man. He outwardly and confidently expressed that the reason he suffered from his disease is because his mother developed a huge fear of elephants during her pregnancy with them, thus causing him to resemble an elephant. What about Mary Toft? Her obsession with rabbits is used to explain that she maternally impressed rabbit-like qualities on what would be her potential children. If this isn't clear to you, doctors were saying that if a woman's imagination is strong enough, then that imagination can be imprinted onto her child. Well, considering that this era was the beginning of the Enlightenment era, we support them going to extremes and asking questions to find out the truth. Are you enjoying the video so far? Why not give it a like? If you enjoy these types of videos, subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell for all the latest updates. Through more and more research and analysis of Toft giving birth, someone managed to catch an accomplice sneaking a dead rabbit into Toft's room. This obviously really began clearing the air on this hoax. They eventually brought Mary Toft to trial to get her to plead guilty to her crimes of fraud. Initially, she resisted, but when she was threatened to have her reproductive system studied, she gave way and said it was fraud. In her own words, and as we expected, she was inserting dead rabbits into her vagina and pretending to give birth. Now, why in the world would someone do something like this? Remember how we said she was very poor? Well, people would pay lots of money to see something crazy like this. So, to the Toft family, this was a no-brainer. Regarding the two doctors who believe this hoax to be real, we don't really know the motives behind their choices. Were they simply convinced of the reality of this birth? Were they hopeful for some miraculous event to be real and presented before their eyes and be the first to discover it? Did they have sympathy for the Toft family and keep the secret hidden so they could make money? Who knows? But St. Andre did release a paper apologizing for his mistakes, trying to get himself out of the discrimination of the people against his gullibility. As with all trends, this hoax was forgotten. Unfortunately, so was St. Andre, who lost his position and died in poverty. Mary Toft was nothing other than an obscure figure, continuing her life in poverty, with the exception of the Duke of Richmond bringing her into dinner with guests that were curious about the case. So, what does this tell us? Obviously, we all want money to survive. Or maybe we just want fame. It seems like this story can teach us who are deeply immersed in the technical era. Many of us seek validation and clout online. But how far will you go for it? At the end of the day, Mary Toft became a nobody again because her actions were supported with lies and fraud. But what did you think? Do you think this case can be a lesson for us today? Do you have any information on any other odd cases throughout history? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you later.